What's happening, everybody? I hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. Once again, free Sunday scan. I hope you guys do enjoy it. I really appreciate the comments, so thank you for those that do take the time to reply to the email. Even on Mondays, Tuesdays, maybe a trade that you took off the scan. A lot of you guys send me charts and whatnot from trades that you found off the scan, which is really neat. I appreciate seeing those kind of things just because, obviously I do this every single night for subscribers for Investors Underground, but for the other guys or girls that, are not part of the service, it's always nice to at least have some type of influence on a potential idea that ended up making somebody money. And even if you don't take a trade, even if you don't make any money, at least you can kind of see the thought process, the why. And I've been trying to throw in some tidbits as to, the reason why I took a particular trade. So hopefully you guys find that extremely helpful. If you guys paid any attention the last couple weeks, then, the trades such as CEI, VISL, I think we just had... now I'm going to draw a blank on it because I'm trying to rapid fire them all off. CODX, MTP, and many others. CODX is another prime example of what we discussed last time, looking left to kind of anticipate what may happen on the right. And, as usual, we go back to this prior big day, but then we had a huge day right over here. And the volume was actually lower than this day here. So we still want to always use this one just in case. However, if you take a look, looking at it, it's 170s high. But since it was just a couple weeks ago or a week and a half ago, many of you guys should remember that it actually did test that I think it was 207 or so pre-market. And so it should not surprise anyone that if you looked left, it found a little bit of trouble at the same spot. And, this also happened on IMUX on the move. So it might take a little bit more time to go back. But the same type of move happened 2 times in a row. You look left, and it will help you, at least guide you to the right. It does not mean that every single time this is going to work. But it's a starting point. It's a safety point in the sense that you're on the right side of the trade. Okay, where do I sell? What do I do? I nailed it. What do I do? Where do I get out? Where do I at least sell some just to ensure that, I'm not just gambling at this point. I nailed a good trade, but I want to keep it a good trade. And this is a perfect example of, well, if you nailed it, there's a good chance that it's probably going to have a little bit of trouble around the prior resistance. So why wouldn't you size down some? Now, sure, you could write out a good average and whatnot, but the idea is, what works more often than not. And for those of you guys that didn't see the speech on YouTube, definitely check it out. But the goal on the YouTube speech, and let me just pick it up here real quick. So the goal with this video that I had done, I put it on YouTube. This is what I had talked about in New York City, and I had kept on making references to it and whatnot. But as you compile this data over and over and over, you're going to start to see similarities between certain moves. And, if you're doing something that works a high percentage of the time, doesn't necessarily need to be 90% like I mentioned in this particular speech, but something that happens 7 out of 10 times, 8 out of 10 times, 9 out of 10 times, why wouldn't you do that? More often than not, it's going to be the right move. There are going to be times when it's the wrong move and you left, a decent chunk of money on the table, but the idea is longevity. The idea is to really, especially for those that are starting out trading, the idea is to try to make this an actual profession. You want to become a full-time trader, a lot of people. But you're not going to do that if every single time you're on the right side of the trade, you just try to wait for a home run. You need to start to take moves that probability suggests is the right move to take. And if that means that 90% of the time, this likely is not going to break that prior high, then get out. You can always hold some, and you can always add back as well. We had that happen on VISL, where it did actually go back and retest that prior level. And this pre-market level, I think it was right over, this was the most recent move, but let's look at right over here. It went over that daily level. So typically I don't like to step in front of anything pre-market. Unfortunately, this was definitely ripping pre-market, and it was already over those levels, but it's safe to assume that this level will peak. If it doesn't, then yeah, it's going to be an outlier day. And the key is that you can always add back. So if you're doing the smart thing and taking it off into this level, or at least a good portion of it, you can always keep that feeler, that quarter size. And then if it proves that, you know what, today we're going higher, then you can always add back more. And those are the days that, yes, they go nuts and they have some type of major short squeeze, as you guys likely remember. So, and with that said, you take this, you look at these 350 levels. So now let's go back at the 1 minute chart. Zoom back a few days. And before this took off, you can see how many fails it had before it finally ripped through. So it went up, kind of dabbled around, hanging around, and then it finally cleared through. So it took about 10-15 minutes to just clear through, but as it did, you can see that it just started to launch, and that was that daily resistance that should have held. And the other example that I had given to you a while back was this ATIS trade that I actually was up pretty large on. I had a 180 average, I added 220, 240, whatever it may have been, and it ramped right into 3. And rather than looking left, I was just kind of caught up in the moment, letting the trade work. I had nailed a fantastic entry, and why not let it work? Why not? We're in the right market. Maybe it'll turn into a home run. Wrong type of thought process, right? So instead of taking 70, 80, 90% off into that daily chart resistance, which right here you can see it kissed. It went straight up. Granted, I had great average down here, added the dips, added the dip, started to squeeze out, and I started to believe that, hey, maybe this time's different. Wrong thought process, right? But this just goes to show that 90% of the time I would have been happy if I had taken it off. And had it broken out like VISL, I would have had all that padding to go ahead and restart into a little bit more size. So I'd have a quarter, maybe I get back up to a half. If it continues to go, I can always scale in, because that time is different, but you should never anticipate that it's going to be different. So anyway, if you haven't checked it out yet, make sure you check out this speech. I think that it really drives home the importance of making sure that every trade that you take fits into a category. And I think the big thing about it is that a lot of times, even when I'm taking trades, I'll fit it into a category right away. And if I can't, then I put my foot on the brakes a little bit, and I say, wait a minute, I'm just trading to trade at this point. So that's what my thoughts are on that. If you guys have any questions, reach out, leave a comment, and more than happy to always get back to people. Second thing, Traders for Cause, 6th annual charity conference and golf tournament. First DM that I got as soon as I posted it. I was thinking about going, but I don't golf, so I'm not sure that this is for me. First off, golf is a choice. It's not included in the ticket. You can add on golf. It's an option after. So if you want to add on golf, then go for it. So the key is, if you're just looking to go to the conference, it's going to be Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. Sunday we do a breakfast, and then we do some breakout groups. You can get a lot of one-on-one time with people, Q&A, and things like that. But Friday night's a great cocktail event. Saturday, full day, we do a nice bunch of presentations. We do the trader talks, which are a shortened version. So basically, you're supposed to take everything that you would talk about in an hour, condense it into the main points that you want to get across, and try to do it in as little time as possible. And my speech that I just did right here, this I probably could have talked about for, 30 minutes, an hour, something like that, but I condensed it into 7 minutes and drove home the point and why it was important, and if and when you don't fit into a category, what can happen. So that's what we do during the day on Saturday, as well as a couple longer speakers like Dr. Brett Steenbarger. He is amazing. Everybody loves him. He works with Bella over at SMB Capital. And, I mean, there's nothing bad to say about the guy. He's awesome. And everybody enjoyed him the couple times that we had him out the first year. And I think the second year, third or fourth, or one of those, he had a conflict. But he's been a big part of it. And always really fantastic feedback. So I'm very excited about that. And so anyway, early bird discounts go until July 31st. So you've got another week and a couple days. If you have any questions, reach out to zach@tradersforacause.org. So anyway, let's get back in the scan. MTP is going to be the first one that I'm going to be watching tomorrow. As I said, I always try to give something. At least you can learn from it if you don't trade anything or none of these ideas make sense to you for your type of trading style. So I kind of already did that with looking left and to help you with right, looking where the resistance is and things like that. But once again, another thing to kind of think about is, everybody always tries to find the top. Everybody's always, top tick, top tick, top tick. And then all of a sudden it squeezes and everybody goes quiet, right? Everybody is all of a sudden they're no longer, bragging about how they got the top tick because they just got hammered. They just got hammered by trying to find the top. So you can always see that. You can always kind of identify, so much for posting the top tick. Because it's not a good strategy over the long term, especially for new guys. New guys have not really kind of been there yet. And everybody that I know that has kind of been through it has really blown an account trying to find the top at least once. And, it's part of the learning curve, but it's just something that can be avoided. So I don't think that new traders should be trying to find the top at all. And I think that this MTP example gives you a little bit of a glimpse of how you can just kind of wait. And there is still a lot of meat left to the bone without trying to find the top. And so that's exactly what I did. I let it come in. I'm familiar with this name. I've traded it many times before. You can kind of see the volume here. You can see that it has a history of selling off. It does not mean that it's going to each time, right? As we saw with VISL and others. But there is a good chance that it's going to run into resistance. I'll let it run into resistance without trying to find the top. And then as it does, and as it confirms and keeps on rallying and failing and rallying and failing, then I will start to scale into the position. And then at least you have something to risk. You're sizing in based off the prior highs, the pre-market highs. If you're nervous, then you're in too much. But at any rate, anticipated the fact that it was probably going to slam. It didn't really pull back at all. It didn't really trap too much. It didn't give it long any reason to sell in the morning. So that was my thesis that I had told the room, that I felt like it was going to slam at the open. And so anyway, I went ahead and covered some because I got the thesis correct. And then after that, I started to scale in just because it felt like it was still staying heavy. So at any rate, made it basically 280s to 180s on about half. Covered some down here, and I covered the last about a quarter, about fifth left right at the close. So at any rate, tomorrow, like I said, main watch off the open. Yesterday's runner, in this case Friday's runner, potential off radar for most people. So we hope higher the better. Get back in, maybe retest the twos, and then look for it to kind of slowly fade off people's radars and fade back to where it came from. You can kind of see over here on the daily, it usually fails. Over here, same thing, usually fails. So again, you don't have to find the top, just as long as it starts to fail to follow through. Just like we saw on OTLK, we had a little bit of failed follow through, but as it started to find a base, I moved on Friday. But I do think that this is going to continue to give us a nice little opportunity this week as well. But again, that's another example of, it's not going to be the one that everybody's watching because it ran a couple days ago. However, if it does have a little bit of strength and it fails off the open and there isn't follow-through momentum, then I'm definitely interested. Haven't traded too many IPOs lately. Like I wrote over here, RVLV, Work, Chewy, FVRR, and CRWD. Those were the ones that were amazing. They really gave some really, really big action. A couple others too. But huge volume, huge range. So this is the closest thing that we've had to it. Pretty nice. I didn't really get in there on, I don't think I got in there at all on Friday. But I like the range. It opened up 32s and it ran all the way up to 39s. Consolidated, came back, kind of retested towards VWAP. Didn't kiss it, but it did a little double bottom here. So in my eyes, as long as 36s hold, we might see a little rally back towards 30, 38, 39, 40. If it gaps up too much, if it gaps up over this level, 30, 38, 50s to 39, 40 range, then I'd probably be looking for somewhat of a pullback. IFYA, you can kind of see it had a weak open. If I can go back. Oh, no, it was AMK, rather. I was talking AMK. AMK I'll do first. Had a relatively weak open. So this is the first day. And then a weak open. Started to come back. Nice ABCD setup. That's what I'd be looking for. And likewise on AFYA, this was the first day of the IPO. You can see nice little ABCD setup. And, gearing up, higher lows, higher lows, higher lows. So in that case, I don't mind anticipating VWAP cross, the reclaim of VWAP. However, it's not something that I would want to be sized in because you should always assume that it's going to fail. But if and when it does break, can scale into the winner. So I'd be looking for similar things like that on AFYA, AMK, and MDLA. So again, it's kind of hard. They're IPOs. So, you can have one idea now, but we need to see what it does in the morning. Other than that, we've got DDS. DDS was insane. Now, it's kind of difficult. I did see this ramping up, and I did short it. I shorted it over here, covered the flush, shorted it up here, but then I covered for $1 and ended up coming back a little bit lower. But again, it's got to be small size. It's very low volume, and the most important thing with this is, have wish orders out there. And, anytime that I'm expecting a potential parabolic move or a flush or anything like that, this goes back to the OTC days. I'd always have some type of wish orders out there where if and when it did open up, and by open up, I mean it starts to come out of that regular range and it starts to increase range one direction or the other, right? So when that happens, a lot of times it's literally just that move, right? So it's literally just maybe a market order that somebody's stopping out and all that volume comes and then that's it. All the buyers are gone. Or somebody bailing on a long, it flushes out and bam, the seller's gone. That was your one chance to get those fills. So that's why I always like to have a few out there in the event that it literally just flushes out and then rips right back. And in this case, it was necessary. But anyway, looking back, obviously nice little trend grind, but probably 90% of the time, probably 99% of the time, being patient and adding would not have worked, right? So this is kind of an outlier situation. The only concern that I have, two things. One is you're coming up over here into this resistance. I guess maybe three. So you got daily chart resistance. This was the last day I had a lot of volume, which was about 3.5 million. Second thing is insider selling. So not that it was a lot, but just if we see any more hit, this whole infinity squeeze type theory, maybe they use this type of parabolic action as their exits. For right now, it's just one guy, so I'm not thinking that. And then the third is that everybody just kind of like snapped their fingers and they're like, all right, this is going to be a squeeze. It's going like crazy. And so as that idea gets crowded, it's going to end up becoming a decent short. So I'm going to go in with an open mind. Week opens, consolidate, starts to grind, I will join. If it fails, I will join. And you can see how clean the trend was. So the only way that you're going to get in trouble here is anticipating the move with too much size. So be cautious with that. AKTX, nothing I love. It had a little bit of a rebound, and it's a former runner, and it hasn't ran in a while. There's a good chance that this just does nothing. It hits this resistance right over here, so ideally pushes up towards 250s, fades off, and we have a nice clean short as we're trading other things, and we don't have to really monitor this one too heavily. Or maybe we get a PR, algo comes back, and we get a nice move. But at any rate, it's a former runner. I'll watch it. SRWD, nice action on Friday. I had a good read on it. A couple little bit of FOMO entries here and there, but for the most part, shorted the parabolic. I shorted it pre. I covered the flushes, shorted the pop, covered the flush, re-added small, but then ended up re-shorting perfectly, and then covered the wash and then left it alone. This right here kind of shows me that maybe it was coming apart and then it ripped right back. So it's very, very easily could become a Zoom type situation where, wow, that one actually pulled back nicely too. Where we get that gap up and it just kind of hovers up to 100 for the short term, and then it provides us with a nice little pullback. So I'm not going in with any strong bias. I think we could easily have a $3 to $5 day tomorrow, but I'm just not. I'm not sure which way yet, and because of that, I'm going to let it tell me. CAPR, this one, they're all ready to go. So obviously they can raise, and we need to be aware of that, especially if you're trading it pre-market, especially if you're trading it after hours, whatever. However, if they do drop a PR, if they don't raise in the next couple days, then all the people that were shorting based off the filings are going to have to probably unwind their position. So this happened like RBZ and a few others, where then everybody was like, hey, wink, wink, the offering's coming at 4, whatever. And, it just didn't happen on the right time frame, and it ended up squeezing everybody out, right? If you guys remember, this day right here, it actually was down to $4 pre-market, then came back 6, 7, 8, and everybody got screwed. They ended up raising at that price. I think it was 5 at that point. But the key is that shorting to anticipate an offering on a super, super low float is never smart. Small size, maybe, but aggressive size on a low float, never smart. NEPT, great trend. I'd be looking for the same thing. Week opens like this. You can see it had a week open, the wick, and then rally back. So looking for the same thing. It does have a history of maybe gapping up and pulling back nicely, so I want to be aware of that, and I wouldn't mind joining that. We've got some great volume here, pretty much matched. That was 8.9, and this one was 8.5. So pretty much the same volume, those two big days. But this does pull back a lot, so I want to be aware of that. But for now, week opens and keep on going. If it stays heavy, 9:45, 10 a.m. plus, I will definitely fade it. ACST, this had a $7 price target that we talked about on Thursday. It's been pretty nice since. I actually had a thought process to swing it, but I ended up selling it. But definitely worth a watch. REKR, same thing. I thought this thing would have been pulling back by now, but you can see it's starting to consolidate pretty nicely. So we might be kind of forming a triangle, I don't know, what do you call it, flag or something like that. I don't know all the terms for those types of things. But at any rate, hopefully it offers a pullback day, in which case I would love to join it from 3 down to 250, 240, something like that. But for now, it's consolidating, it's holding well, it held better than I thought, and we'll see what happens. Nugget ETF rules apply. For those of you guys that are unfamiliar with what that means, it's just know what you are trading. Too many people try to treat these things like stocks, and they think that they have to pull back, they have to do this, they have to do that, just because they treat it like a stock, but at the end of the day, it's based off of underlying other underlying securities. And if they're not doing what you think they should do, then Nugget sure as hell isn't going to move. So just never think that it's ran too far, and never think that it's pulled back too far. The good part is when they do pull back, I mean, these things just completely unwind and change their tune. Overstock. Higher the better. Clearly you can see a nice seller in there. I didn't get there on Friday, unfortunately. Nice little push too off the open. It would have been nice, but I was focused on MTP and others. Pretty much setting up a nice top here. You can see that there's a clear seller at the 19 level, which actually was the prior pretty much support of all these moves, right? So take that into consideration. And also, if you guys remember when we were talking about it at this this prior level, the 14, and then I think it was 1550, right? Yeah. So it peaked out 1550 a few times. So this is notorious for doing that type of action where it's kind of putting in a top and then it blows through it. So, but it has had a big move and it's had a lot of volume. So let's see what happens. But $1, $2 range lately, every day, it's a pretty nice trader. The key is just not to be too aggressive on the wrong side. And last but not least, WKHS. I was there, but I just didn't make it, unfortunately. But higher the better. I don't think that this is going to be a sexy type move, like an MTP and like, oh man, there was such an opportunity, nailed it, and this and that. But I think that it's going to be a highly high probability type of fade off of all strength in the near term. In which case, I'd be looking for any power in the next couple days to potentially fade as long as the trend doesn't prove otherwise. So that's my goals for tomorrow. Again, if you have any questions, Traders for a Cause, I hope to see you guys out there in Vegas. I will definitely be meeting some of you guys in Chicago on Tuesday. I'll be out there with Sang Lucci. And normally I would just stay in New Hampshire, but for some reason he's convinced me to get on a plane and get out there with him. So, but it's going to be fun, and I hope to meet a bunch of you guys. So, other than that, again, if you haven't checked out that video yet, make sure you do. Hopefully you can take something from it. It definitely helped me, especially the, kind of how to recover from a big loss. I think that that's the biggest takeaway, and I try to tell that to everybody that I have a conversation with that has been coming off of a big loss, just because it's literally the simplest way to help recover, where you ended up after a decent sized loss. So, and that's basically time frame. Most people try to look for the quick fix. Most people try to look, a week out, 2 weeks out, but really you need to think about big picture, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and before you know it, you're going to be back. However, it's all about mindset, and it's all about the proper plan. So that's it. Have a good night, guys. If you have any questions, reach out. And like I said, I love comments. So feel free to leave a comment, leave a question, and I'm here to help.